Vice Minister. I'm the Executive Director of the National Religious Campaign Against Torture, which is a US-based human rights advocacy organization with over 300 local, regional, and national faith bodies in our membership. Whether you are Jewish, a Sikh, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, or Unitarian, you are part of our national network, and there is one thing the social teachings of your religions all have in common. There is never a reason to torture another human being under any circumstance or for any benefit you think you may gain. It is quite frankly forbidden by all Holy Scripture. And that's really what keeps our national coalition alive and what makes me so excited to be here with this group of amazing folks who are working to address the issue of heat inside prisons and jails. And in representing the interfaith voices, really from across the country here on this call, I can tell you that we are together in the faith community on ending torture, on improving conditions in our prisons, jails, and detention centers, and we will not stop until we do. We've had a lot of experience working globally on how extreme temperature is used to torture people in prisons, jails, and detention. Uh, in some places in the north, but elsewhere too, you can torture people and even eliminate them by placing them repeatedly outside in the freezing cold. In other countries, you can simply put people in boiling hot cells for days on ends or in a solitary confinement cell in isolation. And if you tell people in the US about these practices, they'll say, oh, that's horrible. Oh, those are terrible countries. How can they do that? How can we stop it? They'd be surprised to find out that we do the same thing in the United States. So that's what this webinar is about today, exposing the torture and letting people in this country know that it happens here. And that's really the work and life work of many of the panelists you're going to hear today. As climate change makes the problems of prison and jail heat worse, there are states and cities that are responding and are installing air conditioning. And yet there are many, many other states and cities that are not. And one last thing. This program isn't just talking about conditions for those who are incarcerated. We're also deeply concerned about the impact it has on prison staff. So with that, I'm going to say that this program is being recorded. So if you are okay with that, then stay on. We will hope to bank this as a resource in the series that people can look at over the course of the the rest of the year. Now, I think I want to just say a little bit about to the panelists. If you wouldn't mind, panelists, just going ahead and putting your name and your title in the chat box. And what I'll do is I'll call on you and I'll have you go ahead and say a word about yourself and who you are and what you're doing before you make your presentation. To get us started, we couldn't be any more blessed than to have the president and founder of Texas Prison Community Advocates, Dr. Amit Dominic, who's going to really kind of set the stage for us, give us a sense of why we're here, what her organization's done, why this is such a big priority of theirs to get these webinars together and get people organizing around this issue. So without further ado, Amit, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Hi, Ron. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Ron. You know what, Ron, before I get started, I'm wondering if you can tell the audience a little bit about your experience with our mock prison cell.
Well, interesting that you should ask. It was a few years ago, and the National Religious Campaign Against Torture has been working with Texas prison community advocates for years. It was a few years ago. We had a briefing in the state capitol in Texas, in Austin, and we helped build and then set up a solitary confinement cell, a mock cell outside the Capitol in the parking lot. We had the idea of seeing if we could heat the cell up to as high as 120 degrees and let people experience that. Our generator and our heater kept kicking off. It wouldn't go that high, but it did go up to 90 or 95. So when it was my turn to go into the cell just to experience it, because people were doing Facebook and other things, social media things from inside the cell, when it was my turn, one of the corrections officers that was there with us said, "Hey, Ron, before you go in there, put this on," and handed me her flak jacket. I mean, the thing was really heavy. I put it on and I went in, and I don't know how long I could have made it without the flak jacket, probably not very long, but I could only make it for about 5 minutes. We only had that cell heated up to somewhere between 90 and 95, and we know the temperatures get a lot hotter than that. So I guess that's one way of saying that many of us have been at this for a long time. I think we've raised a lot of awareness. Um, and on the panel today, we've kind of split it so that the first half really can be people who can speak from their own experience, not somebody who was just in there for 5 or 10 minutes like myself. And then we have faith leaders and community advocates who can then kind of merge in with the what we can do about it as advocates. And in the course of it, I hope we can just continue to have a conversation and interplay on how we're all working together. Um, yeah, I remember that very well, Amit, and the briefing that you guys put together in the Capitol was amazing too. It was incredibly informative for those who were there. And again, I think a lot of people that were at that briefing in the Capitol, they said, "Wow, we really didn't know it was this bad."
Thanks for that. And we've been to the Capitol a couple of times since then, and we've gotten that mock cell up well over 130 degrees. I think in 2023 it was it was triple digit weather in Texas and Austin, and no extra heat, no heaters in there, just the sunlight, and it was well over. I mean, our thermometer only goes to 130 degrees, so definitely was at that level and probably exceeding that level. That was one of those times that I personally experienced just a little bit of heat stroke after doing that event, because there was just so much to that event. So a little bit about why I started doing this. My ex-husband was incarcerated in 2015, and that's when I found out about the problem with the lack of air conditioning in our Texas prisons. Um, and I found out as an impacted family member, someone who was going to a prison, driving well over 3, 4 hours, sometimes 6 hours, just to get at the prison at a certain time of day where we knew it was the hottest. Right. So that my loved one could experience just 2 hours of relief from the air conditioning, which oftentimes it wasn't just the drive. It was also the fact that I had to wait outside myself for hours before I actually got in to visit. And from there, meeting other family members, hearing about how they're so impacted by this situation, hearing how they're traumatized by this situation. And then I just started trying to find out, well, who's in charge? Who makes these decisions? Why are we even facing this situation? And I found that the blame fell on our legislators, to be quite honest. I found that they were the policymakers, they were the decision makers, therefore they were the individuals who were responsible. And so I just kind of started out with a letter that I drafted, and I took my little letter to every prison support group that I could go to, and I said, hey, if you sign this, I'll go ahead and mail this off. And from there, I got kicked out of Facebook. I don't know how many times, because I was sending that letter to whoever I can. And at some point, I went on clergy websites and every ministry that I can find, and there's over 4,000 in the state of Texas, but as many as that I can find, on their prayer list, I said, I pray for this, pray for this. This is a clarion call. This is something that the faith-based community should be doing something about. And so I wrote up a whole prayer for our incarcerated individuals who are dealing with the heat and their family members. And that was, and the next thing I know, starting an organization, and I'm meeting with politicians and asking them, please, we need you to support a bill that will put air conditioning in all of our units across Texas. And that's kind of just kind of the beginning of my process. And I'm hoping that you all could see this well. I'm going to just a few quick slides. Um, See if we can. Megan, can you help me out with spotlighting the screen, please?
Sure. Are you able to do your share screen?
I am doing that
There
now.
you go. You are all set.
Thank you so much.
And then you want to hit the slideshow down at the bottom.
There we go. So, a little bit more about the situation, just how bad this situation is. Most of our states do not have full air conditioning in their prisons. So we need to understand there's a difference between full, partial, and complete air conditioning. There are some prisons that have what they call partial air conditioning, where there's some areas where air conditioning does flow and other areas where it does not flow. Then there's no air conditioning where in none of the living quarters is there air conditioning at all. And then there's full where the entire unit has air conditioning and people can sleep in those areas that have air conditioning. Now, one of the reasons that this is important, especially if you're in the Bible Belt states, in our southern states, we have a lot of humidity. It doesn't cool down during the evening as well. So what's happening is at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, it's still brutally hot. People are still sweating during that heat. So that's an important part to recognize. Also, with climate change, we're seeing more and more prisons that need to have air conditioning. For example, Alaska probably didn't need air conditioning years ago. Now it does. There are other alternative methods to air conditioning. However, when it comes down to it, the experts hands down recommend air conditioning is the most effective. However, some places use things like swamp coolers that are not dealing with as much humidity. Incarcerated people are suffering and dying across the nation, and impacted families are bearing the burden of this. Also, and I didn't have it on my list, however, I'm thankful that Reverend Steve mentioned this, that it's also a matter of staffers, right? The staff don't want to come to work in these conditions. The staff are also suffering in these conditions. So that also lends to my last point, which was that it's also not fiscally responsible. It's costing each state more money essentially to be inhumane. And that's something we can address in a little bit more detail in another webinar. Specifically in Texas, we have documented temperatures as high as 150 degrees heat index as indicated from this temperature log. We do consider it to be cruel and unusual punishment and a violation of an individual's Eighth Amendment rights. Essentially, what we're asking for is that temperatures are maintained between 65 and 85 degrees heat index within all of our Texas prisons and within all of our prisons across the nation. So we've expanded from a coalition that's been based just in Texas to looking at prisons across the nation. With climate change, of course, we're experiencing even higher temperatures, longer summers, more extreme temperatures overall. And I'm trying to move my little Zoom picture out of the way here. And so I'm going to focus a little bit on Texas, right? And then in order for those of you from other states to just extrapolate for your state what the situation looks like. So Texas has the largest prison system in the United States. Currently, we have over 135,000 individuals incarcerated within our prisons, and that's from a very recent hearing this month, citing those numbers from the executive director. We have over 102 active prison units, and 71 only have partial air conditioning, and we have 71 have partial air conditioning. Then we have 56 that, sorry, I am messing up my numbers right now. I cannot read today. I'm just a little tired. We have 14 that do not have air conditioning at all, and we have 9 units that are over 100 years old. Now, some of you have been following the air conditioning issue, and you know that there have been statements made about 85 million that was given to TDCJ to put air conditioning in the units. I want to be clear that out of that 85 million, only about 14 million was actually used to install air conditioning. So they're asking for monies on the maintenance budget, but not necessarily asking for monies for air conditioning just by itself. So what I have on the screen are just the numbers from TDCJ. You can look at their website to see what cool beds they have. I want to also keep in mind that in Texas, our privatized prisons were built with air conditioning in them. So that first number of over 46,000 indicates also our privatized prisons that already had air conditioning. And then the term cool beds indicates the areas that are sleeping areas within a prison that have air conditioning. So currently what that looks like is there's over 95,000 individuals in the state of Texas alone that do not have air conditioning. Now, if we were to look at other states across the country, we would probably be close to at least 1 million individuals who are suffering in the heat without air conditioning. The last point I want to mention has to do with just some of the research we've conducted and looking at things like the Eighth Amendment and the mitigating factors that have been utilized in Texas. This is another reason why I wanted to do this webinar and do a national coalition, because our mitigating factors don't work. A lot of people from other states look at those factors and say, you know, hey, this is a good idea. However, they're not functionable. And you can look at the research that we did with A&M on that topic. Also, in terms of heat and mortality, we did some research with Brown University, Dr. Julie Sakara, and from 2001 to 2019, over 217 deaths could be attributed to heat-related deaths. And I actually will state that I believe that number is low. And the reason why it's low is because talking with medical professionals lately, I've realized that there are other conditions that are associated with heat and mortality that can cause death that have not been examined to this point. So I just wanted to set up some of the overall situation. Also in terms of deaths, the number of suicides when it's hot during those hotter months, we also see an increased rate of suicides. We see increased rates of assaults during that time. So those are some of the other tangential problems that go along with the heat. But I really want folks to hear from those who are most directly impacted. So I will hand this back to you, Ron, and we can discuss more a little later.
Thanks, Amit. And we'll get back to the screen with the participants. And I will go ahead and call on you, Andrea Cedillo, who's also with Texas Prison Community Advocates. Go on, please.
Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. And we thank you from TPCA of joining us on this webinar. It is one of the many educational things that we are trying to do with TPCA. And let me kind of go back a little bit and kind of tell you a little bit about myself. I unfortunately was in TDCJ. I can tell you firsthand from the women's aspect of what it took to survive. And it is unfortunate that even though that we've made mistakes in our past, we had to every day wake up with feeling, are we going to make it today because of this AC condition, as well as medical conditions. And I know that being on the forefront when I came back home to San Antonio, it was very heartbreaking to have to leave people behind knowing that they might not make it. And in finding TPCA and getting involved these last years with TPCA, the work that's being done, the advocating, the lobbying that we're doing at the Capitol, it's a must, because TDC is not listening. They are not listening at all, and they don't want to listen. And being in the forefront, and I can tell you firsthand that having to work a maintenance job, how many times we were told to flub these numbers on these temperature recording logs because they don't want to work, or the thermostat's not working, or they have to turn in something, and things were changed. It is unfortunate that that had to happen. It is unfortunate that we had to decide whether we wanted to survive in today or get written up and disciplinaried on a case because we had to do what we needed to do to keep ourselves cool. I was fortunate enough to, have family who supported me, that did provide me a fan or two fans now. Not everybody has that. You can go through an indigent program, but it takes some time. And if they don't have it, you're not going to get it. So these are the things that do happen within the TDCJ system. And as much as we like to talk and as much as we like to tell a story, only so much can happen. And this is where we keep running into a wall with, we can talk to all of these senators and state representatives every day that we want to and beg and plead them and show them statistics after statistics and tell them stories. But ultimately, it's going to take a lot more than just me or those that have been incarcerated to try to get the help that they need. And I could go on and on and on because, this is one of my passions, even though that, I've been able to pick myself up and progress in life and do very well, and own my businesses and so forth. It is imperative that we try to bring as many people as we can together to understand these issues. Dr. Dominique has done a wonderful job organizing this organization and getting it to where it is today. And we need to keep trucking forward, because if it weren't for her and it weren't for the voices of the others, they wouldn't know. They wouldn't know exactly what is going on. I can tell you a multitude of stories of sitting down in front of a representative, in front of a senator, especially the ones that were on the board previously or the committee previously, that don't know what is going on. Well, I just got appointed to the board. I don't really know what is happening. And when you sit there and tell them, this is what's happening, I can tell you firsthand stories. I can give you firsthand testimonies from others of what happens and how they do things. I have some documentation that I kept. The problem is that some of these people, they don't know. They don't know. And you have to enlighten them and tell them. And once they start realizing, oh, there is a problem, then they want to do something about it and they try to help. Now, I do know, I see that we do have, Representative Sherman's on, and, speaking with him, and his staff, previously. It's imperative that they get the help from everybody around, because it's not just one person's voice. It's going to take a multitude of voices to make sure that they understand that this is a very serious issue within the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. And I could keep going. I mean, this is a passion of mine. I'm sorry, guys. I could keep going on and on and on about this. So forgive me. Any questions? I'd be more than happy to ask.
If folks want to post questions as we're going along in the panel, we will have a time to take a look at that. We'll keep going and welcome Representative Sherman to the call. And I'm going to now pass it over to Assistant Imam Joseph Clark, who's Fifth Ward Islamic Center for Human Development and a re-entry advocate, who we need your work out there. Speak to us, Joseph.
Well, peace and blessings, everyone. I'm Assistant Imam Joseph F. Clark for the Fifth Ward Islamic Center for Human Development. I also have been to prison 6 times. I remember the last time I was in, I think I was released in 2007 for the last time, and I've been free ever since. I remember back, saying about the early 90s when I think I was on the Clemens Union in Brazoria County. It would be so hot because they're like 3,500 acres of farmland. So we were in the field. So we would go out 7 a.m. in the morning and work our way to about, we'd come back in and eat around about 11, go back out about 12:30 and work to about 4 or 5 that evening and come in 100-degree heat. At that time, they didn't pass the law to, they had, so many people will fall, or drop because of the heat during that time, that they had to change the law. I think they changed it to 90. If it was anything more than 95 degrees, they wouldn't let us go out. And it would be so hot on the unit that we would break out the windows on the turn road so air can come through the windows. And the the warden would not fix the windows purposely for when it got cold. So during winter conditions, we would freeze to death and that was a punishment for us knocking out the windows on the turn roads because the heat was so much. But I was just giving you just a little snippet of the fact on other conditions that are taking place in the prison system. Basically, I'm the founder of the Halal House Project, and that is a program of men and women who have been incarcerated, who have been on drugs and alcohol, who have overcome addiction and are living successful lives to their tax-paying citizens. And what we ride to do is to try to prevent people from going to prison anyway. I also volunteer to go into the prison system to share my experiences, my strengths, and my hope with the brothers on the inside, and to let them know we have to do our part. We are playing a part in the situations that we're putting ourselves in. We can't deny that. And these conditions are sort of like a turning point for us to do better in our lives. But it doesn't give the system the right to because we committed a crime to make us suffer. And it's really good on what you guys are doing, for these brothers and sisters on the inside. But we can't deny the fact that they must be properly educated on the fact that your problems are of your own making. And it was a bad decision that we made. Some of us didn't have a choice in the matter to wind up in living this type of dysfunctional lifestyle and wind up in these situations to where now we are begging for mercy. They need people like us to speak on it constantly to the legislation, as far as the community. And if they don't hear from people like us on the outside, they really don't care about us on the inside. So it's a wonderful thing that we're doing. The Lives Project is where I do accept people who are coming out of prison or who are dealing with drug addiction and alcohol to try to help prevent them and help them change their lives, only with the participation of them making a sincere attempt to change it themselves. And we help brothers and sisters do that. And we always want to paint those pictures and not forget about the past and share that experience with them to let them know. Because I know when I speak to youngsters, I let them know that this is not a place you would want to go. It's not a fun place. And during the heat, that's when during the heat is when mostly the deaths occur, not only from the heat, but from gang violence. But when we get hot, we get irritated and frustrated, and it just makes us, want to do certain things. So I understand what the brothers are suffering from, and the sisters as well. But we have to continue to do our part and let God do the rest. That's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Thank you so, Imam Clark. And as we started the program, what you said fits in so well to how can people consider extreme heat appropriate punishment for anybody, regardless? How can they do that? And I'm just thinking about, I'm sitting here and calling in from North Florida right now. It's February 6th, and I just had to turn my air conditioning on. It's almost 80 degrees out.
I think Reverend is frozen right now. So I think we're gonna move forward in hopes that he can finish sharing his story with us once the screen is unfrozen. And we're gonna the heat also impacts our family members. Yeah, I hear oftentimes from family members things like they're watching the temperatures every day. They'll lock themselves up in a closet or a small area just so they can experience what their loved ones are experiencing. And I think we're going to move right now to a quick video of a family member sharing her story. Unfortunately, Janet was not able to join us today, but we do have a video. And Megan, can we cue that up?
I will get that started right now.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
And while Megan is getting that started, I also want to once again thank all of our esteemed panelists for joining us. We're apparently having just a few little tech issues that we're going to work through. So thank you for the grace and being patient with us.
See the judge. She sentenced him to incarceration. But TDCJ is sentencing him to death. I don't want my person to become another Lizzie. I don't want him to be another John. I want you to know that the people he served with in the military and the people he served with now call him Delk. You guys have changed his name from offender to inmate, or maybe just 19 top. But for 40 years, he's been my person. And we've talked about the heat issue, and we've talked about what people say, what it's like. I want you to hear what he told me when I asked him how to cool down. He said they take their shirts or their sheets at night and put them in the toilet so that they can get them wet and then lay in them. He said they used to take the water and put it on the ground so that they could lay in the water and cool down. But it's been so hot lately that the water evaporates right away. And if a guard finds him, they catch a case. 3 times he's already been to medical, and the nurse says you have to stay hydrated. So tell me, how do they do that? When they get water from the guards who don't want to give them water, or they're not enough, or they can buy them from commissary and stockpile. But his unit hasn't had commissary bags all summer long, so they can't carry them. And if they take their chain bags, they get another case. So they don't have that. I asked my husband to tell me about the hottest day he's ever had. And it wasn't at TDCJ. He said it was when he was serving in the Persian Gulf in Bahrain. And he said they would go outside to the ship and they told the Navy people, the sailors, you have to keep walking because if you stand still, your boots will melt. I asked him what was worse, and he said by far TDCJ, because at least on the ship you could breathe. I don't know what John did when he couldn't breathe anymore, or what Lizzie did when she couldn't breathe anymore. But I don't want Joe not to be able to breathe anymore. And I challenge all of you. Dr. Dominic said that she has a box that she brings. I just want you to sit in that box for 5 minutes and see if you can breathe. Because that's what it is, you're taking away their breath.
Ma'am, we really appreciate you being here today. We appreciate your comments, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's what we hear oftentimes from the letters that we receive from currently incarcerated people that are veterans. Oftentimes they state that they'd rather be serving in a foreign country in war rather than being present in a Texas prison. And that's the impact, or part of the impact, that is experienced by the family members who are bearing the burdens of buying things, if your state actually even has this option, buying things like cooling towels or a personal fan, which really just feels like a blow dryer just blowing air at you. Those are some of the things that they're actually that they're experiencing. I can't tell you how many times I get letters that say, help me, just help me, over and over again. That tends to be the statement that's being made. And we've tried to help by doing research, by conducting several other methodologies that I'll share with you a little bit later as we get into the call to action. Right now, our moderator is apparently having technical issues and trying to reach me by phone. So we're going to move forward with our panelists at this juncture. And I'd like to hear from Mr. Ren Moore is going to join us now, and he's going to talk about some of his experiences with the heat, particularly a story from 1995. I'm jogging your memory, Ren, for that one. So Ren, can you, Megan, can we have Ren Spotlight join us on camera, please?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Ren Moore. I am a formerly incarcerated individual. I did 20 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Well, a little over 2 years in Harris County Jail, and a little over like 18 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice altogether. And one particular memory that comes to mind when you speak about the heat is when I was on the Beto unit in Tennessee Colony. And I've heard so much today that resonates with me and brings back memories of when the imam talked about being on the Clemens unit in Brazoria and how inmates would break the windows in the summertime, they wouldn't fix them in the wintertime, because we don't really speak a lot about freezing conditions in Texas or cold conditions in Texas. But when he spoke about the inability or the to fix the windows in the winter times, I thought about that because I remember being extremely cold in certain situations when the temperature may have been in the 40s. It doesn't happen often, but these can also contribute to deadly conditions in the Texas prison system. So, but just speaking about the heat, I remember being on Beto, and they're supposed to conduct what they call an in and out once every hour, or an ingress egress every hour, meaning they're supposed to open the doors to let inmates out of their cells and close the doors to let inmates who want to go in their cells once every hour. Anyone who's done a significant amount of time in TDCJ knows that these ingresses and egresses are not always conducted every hour and hour they're supposed to be. So I remember taking water and pouring it on my sheet, on my mattress, so that I could lie in it. And I was someone who was fortunate enough to have a small fan, that could blow air on me while I'm lying in this, this bed in a puddle of water. So the mattresses are made of there's this plastic covering on the mattress for those who aren't familiar with them, right? So you're lying in a puddle of water. By the time an hour would go by and they would do another in and out or another ingress, egress, that mattress would be completely dry, you know. So all of that water had essentially evaporated within that 1 hour time. And there's, I believe I've read statistics to show that crime goes up during the summer months. I also saw some statistics that were talking about the violence in prison increases during the summer months. And I don't have any hard numbers to justify what I'm saying, but it does seem like to me when it was hotter, there was more agitation, among the prisoners. So I know that the heat is not only uncomfortable, but it can be deadly in certain situations. And having spent 20 summers inside there, I can certainly attest to that.
Ren, thank you
Can
so
you
much
t-
for.
Before we let you go, can you tell us a little bit when you say it's deadly? Can you tell us a little bit about, and Andrea, maybe jump in on this, and also Joseph, have you seen people pass out from the heat? Have you seen people die from the heat, or other medical conditions that you've seen them experience?
Well, from my standpoint, I have known of a lot of different prisoners that died in there from various situations. You know, whether it was being killed or from medical conditions. But I know that there are certain procedures that TDC staff is required to go through, even to get a prisoner from their cells to the infirmary. And if you're experiencing an emergency medical condition, you need to get there right away. You may not have time to wait until there's an escort, or to wait time, to where there's a nurse that can actually come to your cell and observe you and figure out if you really need to go to the infirmary or not. So I don't want to say, okay, because I'm not a doctor, I can't say I know for a fact these inmates died because of these certain conditions. But I know that, while I was in there were inmates who died that I felt like probably could have been saved if they would have gotten medical attention, faster.
And Andrea, I see you nodding your head to that. I know we've had conversations about heat exacerbating things like seizure
Yes,
activity.
yes.
You know,
And I wholeheartedly 110% agree with everything that Ren said. We've seen it firsthand. And it is unfortunate that the procedures that they have to go through in order to get to somebody, there's so many that if they are not doing, and I can tell you firsthand that they don't do their 30-minute checks like they're supposed to. They don't. And that's unfortunate, because if somebody is in a one-man cell and is not getting proper ventilation, then they're not getting
That's okay.
they're not getting adequate care, number one. And if something happens and they're not doing their 30-minute check, then what happens is something's going on with them. They're probably having a heart attack, a heat stroke, heat exhaustion that's happening. And by the time an officer comes to see them, and then they have to do these checks where they tap somebody and say, hey, hey, Vasquez, whatever, wake up, shake a leg, do what you need to do. And if they don't do it, then they're calling a code. By that time, it could be too late. And it's unfortunate that that has to happen, because we get officers that don't want to be there. They don't want to work because of the heat conditions. And then too, they just don't want to work because they're not getting paid what they need to get paid to provide security. And they're just doing a job because they know, and I've spoken with several of them, that they are need to pay bills. I've got kids in school. I've got to do this. I have to. Do I want to be here? No. Do I want to treat y'all this way? No. But unfortunately, I've got to pay some bills. Okay, we understand that. But these are human lives. And I can tell you firsthand that having medical conditions, being diagnosed with cancer in TDCJ, when you're not getting medical treatment and you're having issues, and this heat exacerbates these issues, it's not good. And then you have the other aspect of medical who doesn't want to help you. Then that's a whole nother issue. And so, and as y'all can see, my passion is wanting to make sure that I think that if we get this AC taken care of within the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, not only does it lower the bills for TDCJ paying, because those incarcerated are not having exacerbated issues, number one, and number two, they can start really taking care of those that are incarcerated. Because, and I like saying this to everybody, I might have made a mistake. I had to pay for my mistake, but I was not given the death sentence. And I came home. 95% of those that are incarcerated come home. And we have to deal with the medical. We have to deal with the PTSD. We have to deal with not getting reintegrated back into society, because they're teaching and taking care of those that are incarcerated like they're animals, number one. And then we have to come back out, and you want us to be productive, but you're not giving us resources.
And we can definitely hear the passion in that.
Sorry.
And that's one of the reasons why it is so important for during this webinar, why I wanted to hear from impacted individuals, because I think that as our faith-based audience has individuals who are sitting in their congregations, they're sitting in their pews, and they're not hearing what these constituents are saying. They're not engaged with this level of suffering that their constituents are experiencing. And that's why I'm very grateful for our panelists that can tell you firsthand exactly what they're experiencing. I know we're a little bit past our time right now. So, and our moderator sends his apologies because he's suddenly had some computer problems and the computer has shut down. And so we're pivoting at this juncture, and we're going to go ahead and move forward. I want to one last question, and I'm going to ask our impacted panelists to just give me one in 1 minute or less. What
Yeah.
would you most likely want our members, our faith-based participants to know about this situation? 1 minute or less. Just give me the highlights. What do you want them to know so that they can move forward and take action? Audrey, we'll start with you because you
Okay, that's fine. I would like you guys to know that even though we made a mistake, we've asked for forgiveness. We've tried to move on with our lives for those that could. It is heartbreaking that we don't have more of the community to help on situations like these. That we don't have a unified a community to get together to help those citizens that are incarcerated.
Thank you. Ren, 1 minute or less. What do you most want our faith-based community to know?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would just like to say that if there are members, of this panel in the faith-based community or in society in general who have incarcerated family members, I would encourage you to keep in touch with them, to keep in contact with them, because that helps those who are on the inside retain a level of humanity about themselves. Hear them out, because there are people that are down there who can reintegrate into society, who can make a positive contribution to society. There are lots of people right now here on the outside that have become honest, hardworking, productive citizens who may have been convicted of a crime or made a mistake in their past. Don't give up on those people. Don't just throw us away. I know that there are a lot of times we see stories in the news media to where people have gotten out and have committed more crimes, but not everyone is like that. Not everyone gets out and commits more crimes. There are people on the inside who have a positive contribution that they can make to society. And at the heart of it, these are still human beings. And I may be misquoting this statement, but I remember reading something a long time ago that says, the ultimate judgment of a civilization is how they treat their prisoners.
Yeah,
You
you're
know,
not misquoting that. That is Nelson Mandela. And I think there's someone else before that who actually quoted it's similar. There's two actual quotes. So thank you for that. Thank you for definitely humanizing the situation. Mr. Clark, 1 minute or less.
Yes. Well, I would like the faith community to know that God is in the recycling business. If you study the history in any religious belief system, I was once said in our tradition that Christ said a physician is not needed in the house where men are well. A physician is needed in the house where men are sick. And we're dealing with a bunch of mentally ill individuals who probably was mostly raised in single parent households and raised in dysfunction that wind up making simple mistakes and wind up going to a prison system to pay for it and getting more traumatic things happen to them on a mental level, only to be treated harshly through heat situations as far as freezing situations. I remember the question was asked just a while ago, have we seen anybody drop? I've seen many men drop out there in the field, when we were out there picking cauliflower and onions and potatoes and things like this, drop and later on to be told that he didn't make it because of heat exhaustion. There were many times when we got caught up in riots where we were sprayed with pepper gas, where we were crying. It was so hot in the cells that we were crying. And if we wiped our faces, it would just burn more. And we would have to flush the toilets in order to create air, in order to cool our faces off, because if you touch it, it just made it worse. So God is in the recycling business. And it's people like us on the outside who have overcome that, express our gratitude by trying to educate these people on the inside, as well as our political system, that just because you commit a crime doesn't mean that you're a bad person. You know what I mean? We're not bad people trying to be good. We're sick people trying to get well. And most of these people in these conditions are dealing with mental illness and things like that. And we can't turn our backs on them, you know, because if you study the life of any prophet, they always focused on whether people were suffering, not whether people were doing well. That's all I have.
Thank you so much for that. And, you know, I also want to emphasize the fact that, you know, Texas, at least with Texas, Texas has the largest amount of exoneration. So we have a lot of people in our prisons who did not commit any type of crime, but they're still convicted. And I also want to emphasize, regardless of to whether or not someone did or someone did not, this is about how we as a society treat the least of these. And with that, I'd like to once again thank you for our impacted panelists. I'm going to move on to our activist, politician, clergy members. Our moderator is still trying to see if he can sign back in, but I'd like to welcome our second panelist to the screen right now. And we are going to start off with Representative Sherman, former Representative Sherman. I have a hard time saying that. What I really want to say is Senator. So that's what I really want to say. Former Representative Sherman, and also pastor, has been one of the individuals leading the fight to get air conditioning in the prisons in Texas. And I think that he is also available to talk to some of our other states as to the political process and some of the challenges that he faced while trying to advocate for this very important issue. So I'd like to welcome Representative Sherman to the screen. And just have you kind of test out your mic by saying hi and hello to the folks.
Hi, Dr. Dominique. Thank you for putting this together, and to all the clergy, and to Joseph, to Ren, to Andrea. Thank you for the very informative and inspirational information that you provided from experience, and from you being empathetic for other humanity. It's always a pleasure to join you, Dr. Dominique, and to all those who are advocating for humans who are currently under the custody of our criminal justice system.
Thank you. We're going to start off by asking you, why is this a human rights issue, and why should it be a focus of criminal justice reform?
Well, you know, it's sad that we have to have this discussion, especially in a country that has been blessed with so much in resources. We have a $30+ billion storage industry, climate control. We keep our stuff cooler than we keep people that we incarcerated. And when I think about one of the things that Andrea said was that we treat humans like animals. Well, I would have to disagree with that. And the Bible tells us in Proverbs chapter 12, verse 10, that a righteous person treats their animals right. We don't. For our animals in the animal shelters, we have AC. It's the law. We have to. But for humans, we don't. And it's not coincidental. it is intentional. Since the beginning, and many of our prisons are on old plantation sites, especially in the South, where we incarcerate more human beings than we do in the North, from Mississippi to Florida to Texas, Oklahoma, and Alabama. And I can go on and on about the inhumane practices that we have for incarcerating the guilty and the innocent. And this is a system that does torture human beings. And so it is a human rights issue because it's not only about humanity, but it's about our for our profession for Christianity. You think about it, Jesus says it's an open book test. This is what I'm going to say when I come back. And if your legislative priorities, those of you who have been put in position of authority, whether in the faith-based community or in our general government community, I believe Jesus is going to hold us accountable. James says, after all, be not many teachers, because you're going to be judged more harshly. Even when Jesus was facing the crucifixion, I believe that it's in John 19, around verse 10 and 11, the Bible says that Pilate said to Jesus, don't you realize I have the authority to determine whether you live or die? Jesus said in response, you have no authority but what has been given to you from up on high. In other words, you've been placed in a position and you're going to be held accountable, and you better stop looking at votes and realize that you have to be accountable to one. So I don't even like the term politician. I know you reference me as a politician. When I am in office, I am an elected official, but I have a responsibility to do what's right, whether in public or in private, when no one else sees me but God. When you're in that back room and you've been advocating for those that are marginalized in public, but what are you doing in the back room when no one else sees you but the folks who are in that circle? We've got to have the faith-based community, pastors doing more than just trying to advocate the gospel, because the people inside the prison need to be saved today too. And it sickens me to see what sometimes we're pushing the word of God, but we're not advocating for those. He says, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was a stranger, you took me in. When I was sick, you visited me. And when I was in prison, you visited me. And we're turning our backs on them. We're saying, if you do the crime, do the time. But the fact of the matter is, we ourselves are complicit in this criminal action too, because if God says the righteous treat their animals right, I don't see anywhere in the Word of God where an animal was made in the image of God, but every human being was. And we have a responsibility to be humane to humanity.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I want to hear from you a little bit later again when we talk about action steps, and I want to hear a little bit about some of the challenges of fighting this politically. But for now, I would like to welcome Pastor Wesley Bridges to the screen to talk to us a little bit about the work that he's doing with Clergy for Prison Reform. Pastor Bridges is the executive director of that organization out of Mississippi. Thank you, Pastor Bridges, for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Amish, for having me. Thank you, TPCA, for having us as well. I'm an ordained Baptist preacher. I'm going to try to keep it short, under 3 minutes. But we close 4 or 5 times, so y'all bear with me. But I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to say that I'm thankful that our incarcerated and formerly incarcerated persons allow somebody like me to stand on their shoulders, because I never have been incarcerated. So I stand on their shoulders and tout what the Bible says. And the Bible says, remember those who are in prisons as if we were in prisons ourselves. The only reason I don't have a DOC number to share is because I didn't get caught. It was because I didn't commit infractions or crimes or things of that nature. I just wasn't one of those. I was one of the fortunate ones that never got caught when I was doing those type of things. So I'm grateful to stand in this arena with you, ladies and gentlemen, and reminding not only Mississippi but Texas and other states alike that we must see the humanity of every person behind those prison walls. Their punishment, we believe here in Mississippi, and we've been telling legislators as a group for 9 years, and before us, there were other organizations telling legislatures that the punishment is when the judge bangs the gavel and gives out that sentence. The punishment should not be where you sleep. The punishment should be not what you eat. The punishment shouldn't be inhumane, cooling, and heating conditions. I stood in the mock cell for the first time June of last year, Dallas, Texas. Dr. Dom was there and set up the mock cell. It was 120 degrees, and I took the challenge, and I may have made it 4 minutes, but it was unbelievable. The stories have been unbelievable, and it was unbearable. And there is no way, just like the gentleman that just spoke before me, we should treat our animals better than we treat those of us created in the image of God. All of us were created. We were created in the imago Dei, the image of God. And God is no respecter of persons. So we certainly remind our legislators here and around the world, those who will listen to see the humanity of those who have been convicted of various crimes. And not only that, they have to have somewhere to come to when they are released. So here in Mississippi, we advocate on the state level for laws that make moral and fiscal sense. We have data that shows Mississippi is no safer or richer by leading the nation now in mass incarceration. So we advocate for antiquated laws to be dismissed, the habitual offender laws, which we are struggling with here in Mississippi, the carjack laws, things of that nature we are struggling with here in Mississippi. We do have a bill this year. I say we, I don't mean clergy for prison reform. I mean everybody that stands in this space. The Reach Foundation and Representative Justice Gibbs does have a bill, House Bill 568. You can check into that. Because even when they're inside and they're working, they're not even provided protective gear and things of that nature. And ongoing, long-lasting conditions arise from that, cancerous things, tumorous things, and things of that nature. So we want to make sure, even as they work on the inside, they are protected. So we gladly join in this stance. We're not going anywhere. We're here for the long haul. My Bible tells me that we should love mercy, do justice, and walk humbly before our God. Thank you, Dr. Don.
Thank you. And I'm going to want to hear a little bit more about some of the things that you guys are doing in Mississippi. We had the great opportunity of joining your conference and hearing from some wonderful panels of impacted mothers and also your local political officials. And we'll talk a little bit when we get into the call to action about politically what folks can do and some of the things that they can do overall. I think we might have our moderator back. I think, well, just double checking.
Amit, my connection is as a viewer right now. I am not, the screens and everything aren't interacting. My internet went down, but I'm enjoying the program, and thank you for continuing to moderate.
Okay, thank you. You know, what do they say in Hollywood? The show must go on, right? So we
Yeah, I shouldn't have said anything bad about Florida. That's all I can say.
Florida is definitely one of our sister communities. There's definitely some differences between, and I think this is just a good point to just, bring up really quickly. There's differences between our states, right? In terms of of how much impact we're feeling, but with climate change, we're feeling it everywhere. And Florida has been a sister to Texas for a long time, and that we tend to see most of the brutal activities surrounding the lack of humane climate control in both of those states in spades. So I am, thank you, Pastor Bridges, and I am going to welcome Iman Bakwi. And I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself just a little bit, and then tell us a little bit from the Muslim community. What are some of the things that you would like to highlight within the Muslim community to get more involved?
Well, peace and blessings, everyone. I'm Bakwi Sabor. I'm the U.S. board certified chaplain. I am a volunteer in TDCJ, CBCA. As far as heat-related deaths are concerned, to be honest with you, it's just catching my attention. As long as I have dealt with TDCJ and my former experience before serving folks in TDCJ, I'm just becoming aware of the heat-related deaths or the issue of it only a couple of years ago. And I used that information and shared it with the Muslim community. I was able to see that Representative Sherman was advocating for it, you know, in Austin. And I think there was a couple others that may have joined him. I read about that. I read about your organization. And I began to share the information with the Muslim community. So what I want to say about the Muslim community is that we're just coming into the light of this. And Muslims are obligated to stand up for justice, especially when it concerns a population that has no voice or can do nothing for themselves. Therefore, you know, people in this condition have rights upon us. You know, it's not that we're doing them a favor. They actually have rights upon us. And we're thankful for the opportunity to just be now informed and to be on this platform to give us an opportunity to fulfill our obligation. Secondly, this is a multi-faith effort. When we can agree, we agree. And I think this is an opportunity, a great opportunity to find agreement no matter who we are and what we believe and you know, what religious stance we have or anything like that. As the moderator indicated, that we all are concerned about the conditions of humanity. And it is our obligation to join together and to make people aware and to come up with some action when there's such a grievous, you know, a grievous, you know, against humanity. So what I've done with the information is passed it on to some people who I think can actually join this effort and be the right kind of advocates from our community. And so I have forwarded this information to an organization called CAIR, C-A-I-R, and that stands for Council on American Islamic Relations. And particularly, I've contacted the North Texas branch of this organization. It is led by a brother named Mustafa Carroll. He has assured me of two things. They will align themselves with and collaborate on this mission with any and everyone that's a part of it. And they've also assured me that it is on their agenda in the capital of Texas, in Austin, on April 29th of this year, if God wills. So we want to make sure that you get connected and connected fast so that you can have your mock sale down there on that day and whatever else needs to happen. I have forwarded this information and shared it with ICNA CSJ. ICNA stands for Islamic Circle of North America. CSJ stands for Council for Social Justice. They have assured me of their alignment, their advocacy, and willingness to collaborate with this mission. And they have three lead people, a trio, and that are sisters Shazia El Hassan, Sister Nalia Saeed, and Sister Saina Sheikh. So we would definitely be putting you in touch with them as they are the leaders for that organization. Now, both of these are national organizations, so I don't want it to be said right now that I am speaking on behalf of their national headquarters, but I am definitely speaking on behalf of their North Texas headquarters, and that this advocacy and this commitment is at least in the state of Texas right now.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Iman, would you mind putting some of those names in the chat for our
Sure, I'll type it up.
and links to some of those organizations? That would be helpful. Thank you for
Fair enough.
that. We're going to keep moving. Next, we have Pastor Colin Packer, who I've worked with during political session, who's also worked with Pastor Sherman during political session. And I'm going to ask if you can start off by talking to us about what actions can clergy members take right now, and a little bit about what you went through with political session.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Dominic. It's an honor to be invited to be on this distinguished panel. I really had my eyes open. I was a pastor for 13 years before coming to work at the Legislative House, and had the invitation to work with Representative Sherman. And this was one of the bills that was a highlighted bill during this last legislative session, the 87th in Texas. And as communications director, I was tasked with pulling together a group of interfaith pastors to come, advocates, to speak up about this issue, to see if we could get this through in a session where we had $32 billion of surplus. Dr. Dominic, you were tremendous in speaking up alongside other activists and impacted family members and individuals, and we did not get that passed in a session that did not spend near all that money. I think about the text in the Christian scriptures in Matthew 25, where it talks about that whatever you do the least of these, and mentions those who are in prison and visiting them, you do unto me, Jesus says. And when you have $32 billion and you know this issue is here, you're requiring your county prisons and jails to make sure that they're taking care of matters when it comes to temperatures. And then you stand by and see others that are passing away, that are experiencing heat stroke. You're doing this to Jesus. And for all of us of various faith commitments, this is a human rights issue that we need to be standing up for. And that was all before I had a family member this last year that was impacted by the justice system. And that was in a county facility. And I had the at least, comfort to know that temperatures would be moderated because that was required by law. That has to happen in our state prisons. And this has to be federal legislation that moves through as well. And so I'm honored to be involved. I'm working right now on a project of public witness. How do we bring our faith to the public square? And too many of our churches are thinking about how do we get people to heaven, not at all thinking about how does heaven find its way to earth. How does mercy get lived out and justice get lived out? That is the passion of my life, is that we would have people of all faiths come together who all believe that loving our neighbor is mandatory by the commitments we make to the God and the various religions that we follow. This is something we can agree on. This is something that we can build power together to go to our representatives who are supposed to represent our interests with the money through our taxes that we insure. And if they're going to house incarcerated persons in jails and prisons, it should be required and mandated that they take care of them and not see any die on their watch. We have on our Texas State Capitol grounds the 10 Commandments posted. They're trying to get them into our schools. That's another matter for another day that I could speak to. But if we're going to put them on our Capitol lawns, and we have a commandment that says do not murder, then we ought to be making sure in our prisons that that's not taking place. And so this is a call for pastors, for lay leaders, for people of all faiths and no faith to come together in this moment and to make sure that we're standing up for our most marginalized and set aside and forgotten individuals. We are not forgetting them. And we're going to make sure that we step up and do all we can to make sure that temperatures are kept at a moderate rate in this coming session and beyond.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And that's the part I want to hear. We're not forgetting them. I think that is the thing that I want to emphasize. I mean, we can talk about strategies, and I'll move into just some actions that we can take, but don't forget them. Know that they're sitting there not communicating with you because they're scared, because they don't know how you're going to respond. They don't know how you're going to treat them once they say, you know, I'm incarcerated, or I have a child who's incarcerated. A lot of times what those impacted individuals hear is, well, you know, they did something wrong, so they just need to, you know, they need to suffer through it. And if they keep their heads up and they do what they're supposed to do, it's all going to be all right. Not truth. Not if they're in cells over 150 degrees and they're dying. They're not going to make it out to get to what you're asking them to do. It's incredibly hard to study. I say this oftentimes as a former professor. How do I would not ask my students to study during those temperatures. How do you better yourself when you're just trying to stay alive? And we need to really understand that they're just trying to stay alive during that time. And as an impacted family member, one of the things that is painfully realized is that you don't think about it till it hits your front door. And that's, you know, part of what you just mentioned, Reverend Packer, is it, once it hits your door, once you really see it, once you really know it, that's when you want to get involved. And we're asking you to open the door and let it in, so that you can become more active in this situation. As we wind down, I want to share, and I'm going to just tell our panelists as I go through these last couple of slides, if you have something pressing you want to add, we can either put it in the chat or you can kind of jump in, and I will not be upset or offended during just the last few minutes of this. And hopefully we get a chance to answer a few more audience questions. I didn't see any in the chat right now. I did try and respond to one of them. So we're just going to, from current slide. So a little bit about what you can do. Right. This is an example of some advocacy that we've done. You've heard it mentioned. We have a mock prison cell that we allow to heat up in the natural sun, so people can experience what it's truly like. Because if you think you know what it's like, you really, really don't. I have formerly incarcerated people who won't even cross the threshold of my mock cell. So participating in those events and reaching out to us at TPCA or our steering committee members to have those events, that's an option. Some other things that we've done that you can also do, just engaging people in the public, a political engagement, research collaboration. With our mock cell event, we do also have a prison conditions exhibit. This is an example of the press conference that on 2023 that we had a lot of people actually show up to, amplifying the voices of those that are incarcerated and their family members. That's something we try and do routinely at TPCA. Other things that we can participate with you on: tabling, paneling, prayer visuals, classroom visits. We've done several days of mourning, basically anything that educates the public and lets the public know. And this is very important. A lot of the members of the public just don't think they're affected by this. They are absolutely affected. Those who have gone through it are impacted, but the rest of the public is definitely affected. As Andrea stated, 95% of the individuals will come back home. Right? There's a few key streams of advocacy: legislative work and judicial work. So the first bills were filed in 2019. Representative Sherman talked a bit about the bills and his work on the bills. I'm going to fast forward us to 2023, where we specifically asked for funds for 2 phases of installation of air conditioning. And this is important to folks in other states too, who are wondering, do I file bills? How do I file bills? What's some of the pushback? Some of the first pushback when I first started walking the Capitol halls, and let's keep in mind we have over 150 representatives and 32 senators, was this experience of, oh, we didn't know that Texas prisons didn't have air conditioning. What, wait? That was the first level of experience. Then it was bringing reports to them with stickies that say, read me, that talks about how it's not cost effective and how the mitigating factors aren't working, and working with researchers to further build that case and make it more credible and more presentable to our legislators. And then the next thing I was told was, we just don't have the money in the budget. Well, that's where we came up with this phased approach. And what happened with this phased approach is they still, even though Texas had an excess in its budget, they still didn't do it. And the monies that were approved by both chambers were removed during conference committee. So those are just, and I'm mentioning those things for those of you who are faith-based who want to move into discussing things more with your political leaders. Those are some of the things you're going to run into. In Texas, we have what's called Who Represents Me, and I have the link there, and I think we also have it in the chat, where you can get connected to your political officials and start talking to them. And start letting them know, building up a relationship, because a lot of them don't know and they haven't been involved because it hasn't been hit their front door. So those are things to consider. Also, legally, there's lawsuits that can be filed. Those are costly. We are currently in the middle of a Fifth Circuit lawsuit. We're waiting for the judge to render a decision. Oftentimes we're dealing with appeals. It's very difficult to get information from the prisons. Some of you might have experienced that already, but those are some of the options that are existing. And of course, just the power of prayer. Raising up prayer teams, doing things like, I'm going to go ahead and stop. Well, I'm going to fast forward to writing, getting groups of people together to write things like opt-eds. Those are some other things that you can do to help with the mission. You can share our links from TPCA. I've put that in the chat from the coalition. As we're building that, we'll constantly check back for information that you can use to disseminate. We will be sending you all out a link to our toolkit, hopefully within the next few days, and you can help by sharing all throughout social media. That's another important thing that you can do. We also have things like on our Get Involved page, things like conversation starters, which are just our organization's name, and on the back of it, it just has some bullet points about some of the atrocities that go in our prison system. That's something you can do and you can make for your state as well. That folks can just drop those cards wherever they possibly can. Flyers, other campaign tools like T-shirts, stickers, bumpers. Those are all other ways that you can help and assist with the cause, because really it's about making people as aware as possible. We do have some action letters and some petitions available for you on our website currently. We now, as of last night, we have a national petition and a national action letter. I call action letters petitions on steroids. These letters are modifiable. So we do have language that's already there for you. However, especially you all as faith-based individuals, you might want to change that language. So signing those petitions, sending those action letters, meeting with your political officials, also things that a few other things, becoming a pen pal to someone who's incarcerated so you can really hear the truth. Writing op-eds, joining teams where you can volunteer and respond to the folks who are incarcerated, or just in terms of pushing the campaign agenda. plugging into coalitions, testifying at board meetings, testifying at political hearings. Those are doing a movie day. There are a lot of movies out there, and just on YouTube, if you go to our website, we've got several videos that talk about the issue that you can just do a movie day and discussion with. So those are just a few other options. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention donating to TPCA as we continue to build our efforts. We also have cooling towel donations where those towels go directly into indigent incarcerated individuals. And those are just a few things that can be done to assist in the effort. And we've just got maybe 3 minutes left. And I'm sorry we started a little bit late with tech issues today. But I just want to open this up to our panelists. Just in 1 minute, what would you want to, for those who are present, and I was looking for questions too. I didn't really see a question to be responded to right now, but what would you most want folks to know? Just a minute or less, round robin, any of our panelists who'd like to join in. I don't see any hands raised yet. Pastor Bridges.
I would want people to know, to realize that we have the power. Our legislators work for us. We have the power to advocate, to approach them, to talk to them. A lot of us know our legislators personally. They campaign in our area. We go to church with some of them. We see them at the supermarkets and things of that nature. And keep reminding them that your voice needs to be heard. And not only, just from the faith-based community, but any person, you have a voice, and our legislators work for us. Now, they do a lot of ignoring, but that doesn't mean we should be silent. Your voice should always be amplified, and that's why we're here, Mississippi, partnering with Texas, so we amplify voices all over America. That this is a humanity issue, and it needs to be addressed across the board. Thanks.
Pastor Sherman, I'm going to put you on the spot. 1 minute.
I would agree with Pastor Bridges and TPCA, the advocacy work you're doing. Look, this is a clarion call for us to collaborate. It's a clarion call for us to coordinate together, to be strategic. I've reached out to Senator Younger there in Mississippi, and one of the representatives there in Mississippi, as well as one of the senators in Louisiana, who has come down to our annual Hope Summit. It's about us working together. And finally, I'd just like to say that we've got to be strategic in our approach of collaborating. For instance, PETA, there is no reason that PETA shouldn't be working with, say, the Innocence Project and working to ensure that we have humane conditions in our prisons, and working together with the faith-based community and with advocacy groups like TPCA working together. Finally, I have to say this. As I was touring our prisons, one day I recall going to one of our women's prisons and unannounced. And when I went in, one of the young ladies was very apprehensive about talking to me, but she did. And she told me about a medical condition that she had. She had a cavity, a tooth cavity that she had had for a couple of years, hadn't been seen, asking to be seen. By the time we finally got her a dentist, she now had 3 cavities in very severe pain. And when they opened her mouth, they said, "Now we only can do one. Which one do you want us to do?" That's inhumane, And so we've got to have active participation, as Colin Packer mentioned. We have a responsibility to visit those that are in prison and stay, as Ren said, stay connected to those who are in prison. We did take care of that matter, though, but no one should have to suffer like that. And it's a normal thing, unfortunately, in our prison system and populated by Texans and others.
Thank you. Well, we are about out of time. In the chat, I have put a link to register for our next webinar, which we'll be talking specifically about political advocacy, mostly from the Texas perspective. However, you're going to find tools that you can use in just about all your states. Reverend Ron, would you like any parting words to close us out?
Yeah, I think I'm coming through. Am I?
Yes, we can hear you.
I just want to remind us that those of us who pay attention to Holy Scripture know the immorality that our institutions and the people that run those institutions are engaging in right now. We have a lot to do. Just hearing stories from Representative Sherman, and we all know those stories where people are being treated with the most inhumane practices. It's got to stop. And I just want to really, working nationally as we do, and sometimes internationally on torture, it is just an abomination that it continues to happen in this country, and people just keep their heads poked in the sand, hoping that they don't have to stand up and do something about it. Maybe somebody else will, even the ones that know that this is wrong. It's up to us to mobilize, folks. We heard a lot of great things about mobilizing in this call. We heard a lot of great things about legislation. We heard a lot of great things about spreading the word. I really want to appreciate every panelist who took the time out of incredibly busy schedules to be here. This video of this will live on. It will be on our national website at National Religious Campaign Against Torture, and I hope other places. And we can continue to work together to end this abomination. Thanks for all your work pulling us together, Dr. Dominic, and blessings to everybody who joined as panelists.
Thank you. And with that, I don't believe there's anything else that's left to be said, except I will chime in with an additional thank you to all of our wonderful panelists and for all of our participants who joined us. And we're going to sign off and wish you all a wonderful weekend. Blessings and peace. Bye.